Well, my name is Dr. Robert Leahy, and I'm the author of the book, If Only Finding Freedom from Regret. I hope you get a chance to look at it because I think it might be helpful to you. Today, what I'd like to do is talk about a couple of things that affect regret after you've made a decision or before you're making a decision. Regret is related to your decision-making style. We all have our own approaches to making decisions. Some people want to get the best outcome at little to no cost. We call them maximizers. I got to have the very, very best. They're like perfectionists. Other people are satisfiers. They don't expect perfect outcomes. They can be satisfied with a range of outcomes. These satisfiers are more flexible. Maximizers take longer to make decisions, and they're also less satisfied with the outcome. Part of this maximizing lifestyle, decision style or way of thinking is the intolerance of ambivalence. In making a decision, it's natural you have ambivalence. The word decision in Latin means to cut away from. So you're cutting away from one option to another option. These people who think about options in terms of absolutely perfect black and white suffer from what I call pure mind syndrome. Pure mind is that my mind has to be clear, it has to be black and white, has to be very obvious. They have to feel sure. They can't tolerate any uncertainty. Now, this turns out to be an unrealistic way of thinking, since the real world is filled with so much noise, so much uncertainty. Let's keep in mind that in making a decision, there's no certainty in an uncertain world. You're going to learn how to change your decision style so that you're more realistic, more flexible, and more open to a range of preferences so that you don't get stuck on unrealistic expectations. You don't get stuck on the idea of being a maximizer, having to live in a perfect world. Now, in the book, I identify a number of decision styles, and you can be extreme on either end of the continuum. One is somebody who loves risk, and some people, as you know, take enormous risks and often end up in very, very unfortunate situations, going bankrupt, getting into accidents, overusing drugs, infidelity. These are risk-loving approaches. And this decision style obviously can lead to serious regrets. On the other end of the spectrum, we have people who are risk-averse, who are afraid of any risk, and they want to live in a world where there's no risk. The reality is that the world is really risk versus risk. So, for example, let's imagine that I'm afraid of being rejected, and so my way of handling it is to avoid interacting with people. So I reduce the risk of being rejected, but I increase the risk of being depressed and isolated and lonely. Risk versus risk. It's finding the balance of the risk that makes sense. The second dimension that I think is important is optimism and pessimism. Now, we all know that there are some people who are overly pessimistic, have a dark cloud hanging over their head, nothing's going to work out. Obviously, that has its downside, no pun intended. But there's also people who are overly optimistic, thinking that everything is going to work out. And these people often take risks that are unnecessary because they believe that they're on top of the world and they can get everything they want because they're so brilliant. So correcting yourself, bringing yourself back to a balance is a good way of making decisions that are more rational. Another style of decision making is impulsive versus overly hesitant. The impulsive person just acts on their emotions, is somebody who just does whatever they want to do at the moment and doesn't think of the consequences. Obviously, that can lead to a lot of regret. And there's also the overly hesitant person. Oh, I can't get married because I have some doubts, or I can't take a vacation because maybe it won't work out. I can't go to a movie because, maybe I won't like it. These people who are overly hesitant because they fear that somehow they need more and more information, miss out on opportunities because the world goes by while you're waiting. Another decision style is aiming to win versus aiming to avoid losing. Are you playing to win, or are you playing to avoid losing? Again, some people get so hung up on winning on everything that they persist in lost causes. But playing to win might be a good way at times if you have an opportunity to win. But again, you want to balance it. You don't want to always be playing to win no matter what. Like you have to win everything, every argument, every bet, every investment, every relationship. That's actually going to be a losing course of action. The other alternative on the other extreme is always trying to avoid loss. I don't want to do anything different because then it might not work out. I'll be disappointed, whatever. Losses are part of the game. Wins are part of the game. It's finding the right balance. Another decision style is the degree to which you require an enormous amount of information, or do you really just rely on your hunch or your intuition? Again, either extreme can be a problem. Requiring too much information means that you wait for long periods of time to make decisions. And we actually know that people who take an enormous amount of time making decisions have greater regret. If you rely on your intuition and hunch rather than the facts and weighing the pros and cons, you're also likely to make decisions that don't work out that you regret. So again, you want to find the balance between what the relevant and sufficient information is and whether it seems right to you given that information. Another factor that affects decision making is the degree to which you think you can absorb losses, or do you view losses as devastating? So for example, somebody thinking about divorce might think, I might not be able to be happy again on my own. Nothing is going to be worthwhile. I can't live on my own. I can't absorb the loss, so I'll stay in a relationship in which I'm miserable. That kind of fear of loss leads you to stay in losing causes. Or you might be overly optimistic and think you can absorb any loss. So you double down, you put more and more into your bet, you overextend yourself, and then you regret that. So finding the balance in decision making is a big part of avoiding regret, a big part of making better decisions. Thanks for listening, and I hope you find the book useful.